Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trench Talk, episode 10 here. Going to be going over NFL Week 3 action, a loaded Sunday. My name is Logan Shanks, here with my co-host Christian Royston. Christian, was this probably the most entertaining week we've had so far? I don't know, but there's definitely a lot to talk about here on this Monday, where we will talk about yesterday's action and then preview tonight's doubleheader, the first doubleheader of the season. So we could start here with, I guess, there's a lot of surprising games. That's kind of the bulk of this show, or this week at least. So I guess kind of your first surprising game that you kind of caught yesterday.
Well, I was paying attention to the Vikings game mostly, but on the background, I kind of saw what the Steelers were doing.
Yeah.
And, they're 3-0 now, which is kind of crazy to think about because they have Justin Fields at the helm. But I've always been high on Fields, and I think he's playing pretty well. And I feel like this was a week where it was, tough for me to pick out my worst performances. Because last week it was everybody was playing bad. But this week you have, people you don't expect to play well just having games of their lives.
Yeah, and Justin Fields had a pretty good game, like you were mentioning. One thing we always kind of talk about, though, is sustainability. I said it. I worked out. There's going to be a lot of conversations this morning. Steelers are 3-0. Does Justin Fields deserve to keep being the starter?
I would say he does, because at this point, we don't know what Russell Wilson's going to be like. And if he ends up being like the Broncos Russell Wilson, then they're going to start losing games.
Yeah, I honestly think there are points in those games where if Russell Wilson's your starter, you might lose that. You probably lose that game because he's probably going to try and make some plays. He doesn't, I think he's obviously a veteran quarterback, obviously, but he's going to want to make plays, whereas Justin Fields is going to be like, I can make plays with my legs, and if I can't, then you're just going to either throw the ball away the offense just seems to work with Justin Fields. Whereas with Russell Wilson, you're going to want to be passing the ball more, and I just don't know if that would really work out with this team.
Well, I like the way that their offense is set up now. It's focused around running because, you have threats like Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren back there.
Yeah.
So if you add Justin Fields, it's these play action plays are kind of tough to defend. I think that's what we're seeing. But Russell Wilson doesn't really bring that anymore.
Right. And, it has been kind of, I'd probably say not the hardest schedule for them starting out. So, yeah, they beat the Chargers this week. Last week, they beat the Broncos. And then who did they beat week 1? It might have been I don't want to say it was maybe the Raiders, but regardless, you're not exactly going up against the best defensive lines, the best secondaries in this league.
It was the Falcons.
So, again, and we just saw.
And that was when they kicked 6 field goals.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later. They kicked 6 field goals, but also that's the same Falcons defensive line that let Carson Steele kind of tear them up last night. So,
I think.
But I think with the Steelers, we will have them in our frauds or not section later on. But I'm definitely surprised by this, by them kind of starting out 3-0.
Yeah, and I think the Chargers definitely could have fought back if Justin Herbert didn't get hurt. I think that was probably the big thing that gave them the win, because gosh, I don't even know who came in to replace
Taylor Heineke.
That's right. I forgot he's on that team. But he doesn't really have the magic anymore. The Taylor Heineke we once knew.
Like we always. Everyone knows this. You have, as a backup, you come in, you kind of have your run, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna, unless you're Brock Purdy or a couple other guys, you're not going to be a sustainable starter. So,
and that team kind of needed Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that Quentin Johnson again had a touchdown in this game after we all wrote him off last year.
Yeah, I think once you're like the only guy back there, it's like
That's true.
I have to start producing.
Well, they have Lad. Is it Lad McConkey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So which is a rookie. So they have their number one and number two guy is a year two guy and a rookie. So, but I mean, yeah, Justin Herbert, his health definitely is gonna play a huge factor on where the Chargers can go. I thought they had like a decent start to the season. They go 2-0 and
Mm-hmm.
they, we're getting a real good run game from J.K. Dobbins. But I mean, if Herbert's out for a while, I don't know really how far this team can go with Taylor Heineke. All respect to him, of course.
Yeah, and plus J.K. Dobbins was kind of shut down that last game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's kind of been ripping through teams, and maybe the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers have a really good front seven, so it's kind of hard to rush on them. But at the same time, he just couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, that's what's been keeping them in this game. The Steelers defense. I mean, I need to look at their numbers, but I'm sure like guys like T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, those guys are. I mean, those are two of the best guys at their respective positions. So.
T.J. Watt got another sack too.
Yep,
Cameron Hayward.
Of course he did. But yeah, overall, just really surprising outcome from that. I'm obviously, like you said, if Herbert stays in that game, they might, they have more of a chance of winning. I think he left in like the third, fourth quarter. But Steelers win by 10 at home. So
yeah.
Another team that dominated at home though and had a really surprising win. I watched the whole game and I was just waiting for the Texans to make their comeback, but they got apparently from what it sounds like, from what people are talking about, I want to watch more of that film. Another amazing scheme from Brian Flores.
Yeah, Brian Flores. No, Brian Flores might be the best defensive coordinator in the league currently.
I mean, he's made Brock Purdy and C.J. Stroud, a couple of the best young quarterbacks in the league, have probably their. I mean, Brock Purdy wasn't as bad, but C.J. Stroud yesterday probably had his worst performance as a pro.
Yeah, and I think what I saw is the Vikings recently have not lost if they win the turnover battle.
Yep, I saw that tweet.
And Flores has done a really good job of forcing turnovers.
Right.
You create pressure. You have people sitting in where they need to be. Good place. It's like the right place, right time. But it seems like they're always in the right place at the right time. And I mean, they're forcing turnovers. Sam Darnold's keeping the ball safe, and they're winning games.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up real quick, but I want to say Stroud threw two interceptions. They want to say they also fumbled as well. Nope, just the two interceptions. But you're making Sam Darnold's day a lot easier, but it doesn't really seem like he needed it because he throws 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns on only 17 completions, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's like
almost a fourth of his like every. How do I want to say this? I'm not great with wording math.
He only needs 4 passing plays to get a touchdown. Every drive.
Yeah. On average, his fourth completion would be a touchdown. That's probably not the best way to say it, but I didn't get a degree in math. So
we're going to be a math show now. We're going to have to teach Logan some math.
We're going to be next gen stats.
Get the chalkboard out.
Yeah. No, we'll turn into John Gruden's new film show. I love that. That might be one of my new favorite shows on the internet.
Yeah, I got to get into that.
He like somewhat talks football, but also just the way he talks about football is hilarious.
Just the way John Gruden talks.
Yeah.
Love it.
But Sam Darnold is. I mean, I don't know how much longer he can keep this up, but 4 touchdowns yesterday was insane. And even with Justin Jefferson, left that game for a little bit. So his other touchdowns, I want to say, went to Jalen Naylor. He had one to Jalen Naylor,
He's
Aaron
been pretty
Jones,
good.
and Johnny Munt, their backup tight end.
I
Probably
remember
their
watching
backup tight end.
Yeah, and people are forgetting that this team is still waiting for key players to return from injury.
Yep.
Like they don't have TJ Hawkinson. They don't have Jordan Addison. Like this team looks unbeatable, and they're kind of nerfed at this point.
Yeah, I mean 3-0, but I think in these next 3 games they can honestly go 0-3. They are in Green Bay next week, and then they play in London against the Jets, and then they play at home against the Lions. So we're going to see what this team's really made of. I mean, a great win against the Texans. Again, that defensive scheme was crazy. Like I said, I want to see what has really made it so difficult. But I think obviously a guy that's been making the difference and has his whole career in Minnesota is Harrison Smith, and he's been balling out.
Oh yeah, I mean it seems like everybody across the board is doing really well. I mean Harrison Smith has just been in great places. He's created pressure at times. I mean it's like you talk about a guy that's all over the field. It seems like that's where he is.
Yeah. So I mean, on the Texans front, what can you really say about this? I mean, you got outplayed, and you can't. I mean, when CJ or when you're held to 38 rushing yards and you have to rely on CJ, I think CJ can be relied on in spots, but not when you're already down multiple touchdowns. I mean, they didn't score until the third quarter, and by then it was 21-7.
And I think they're missing Joe Mixon like a lot here because,
as is my fantasy team.
Yeah, that's true. And they don't have a run game, and if you don't have a run game, it really makes it easy for the defense.
Yeah.
You just have to defend the skies.
Right. And with the zone concept that I think, Brian Flores has been leaning on, that's been pretty easy, even with the Texans having probably a top 3 wide receiver trio in the league.
So, yeah. Although Tank Dell was like non-existent in that game.
Yeah. Stephon Diggs was the leading receiver.
Nico Collins, I think, was a little quiet.
Yeah.
I guess I could check.
Yeah, I thought in terms of the surprise factor, I thought this was really the game where the Vikings were going to probably lose. But I doubt it. Or and I didn't even bring up the fact that I'm sure you saw the Texans had 3 straight false start penalties.
There was a lot of false starts, a lot of illegal shifts in that game. So there was probably like a good 20 minutes of airtime where we were just looking at the refs.
Texans 11 penalties for 88 yards yesterday. I mean, I think we got to at some point make our way out to US Bank because that atmosphere seems insane.
Yeah, I think they were talking about how loud it was there, and I mean, if that's a factor going forward, I feel like they have 2. They have a home game against the Lions, which could be huge.
Yeah.
That might be a game where we see them pick up another or a conference win.
Yeah. Or a division. Yeah.
Start covering a lot of high school sports.
High school, yeah. And with the Big 12 season coming up next week for us too. So
conferences on the mind.
Yep. But I think I always have to keep my eye on the Vikings just because of proximity, and my girlfriend, obviously a Vikings fan. You have, kind of become a Vikings fan now. So, I mean, I think just whenever you played in a stadium, I've been to US Bank for concerts, so I can only imagine when you're in a closed stadium like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wish the Cowboys stadium could get that loud, but apparently our fans don't care enough. We'll get to that later. That's about all I have to say about this game. Again, I don't think we should overreact on the Texans front. They're still a good team. I think Brian Flores has made every quarterback that they've played against this year look not great. So
Yeah, I think currently the Vikings look like the most balanced team in the league. Because, I
I
mean,
would
a lot of
agree.
these teams, they have these really good defenses,
Hmm.
but the offenses are kind of struggling to keep up, or it's the
Hmm.
other way around. I mean, you have probably one of the best defenses in the league, and then your offense is able to create touchdowns just easily. It's like they might be hard to stop going forward.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones again, another solid game. I know he went over 100 yards as well. So again,
Hmm.
balanced. They, I think, honestly, unlike the Steelers, this is likely sustainable for the Vikings. So,
Yeah, I said I needed 3 games. This is 3 games.
hmm
I'm sold.
what I am not sold on now is
Oh,
the
and this is why I
Saints.
made the 3 game rule is for the Saints. It's
Even though
dangerous.
they decimated my Cowboys last week at home, they go back home and host the Eagles, and
Hmm.
you put it pretty fairly in the docket here that they just choked it.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the Eagles kind of gave them a chance to get back into the game. It seemed like they were like the Eagles never put it away. You know,
Hmm.
the door was always open, but Derek Carr was just kind of. I mean, after his first 2 weeks, he was leading the MVP race, although it's super early.
Yeah, week 2.
Yeah, but this week he was just. I I looked it up going into like the fourth quarter. He hadn't had 100 yards yet. He
Hmm.
was probably throwing like 50% completion, an interception or something.
Hmm.
No, I think he had.
He had an
I think
interception. Yeah.
no, I think that was later though.
Oh,
That was
okay.
the last play.
So they
But he had
finished in
yeah,
Alvin Kamara, 26 carries, 87 yards. That's probably on the like realistically against a decent defense. That's probably what you're going to get out of Alvin Kamara at this point. But Derek Carr, yeah, finished 14 for 25, 142 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
yeah, and I mean going into that last quarter, he hadn't had the interception. He hadn't had the touchdown.
Yeah.
He was under 100 yards. And I think the last game, excuse me, the last game that he hit, he had a game like I guess similarly bad was like 2016.
Right. Um,
So almost a decade.
and we
They
say they
said it's
choked.
historical.
Yeah, we say they choked this because not only could the Saints offense not really get anything going, but they did have a lead going into that fourth quarter. They were up 3 to
Yeah.
0. For anyone that watched that game, I'm sorry, except for the fourth quarter, because that is just when the Saints defense decided um, we're not going to tackle Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. I mean, they finally get the offense moving in that last quarter, but then they let up 2 touchdowns to Saquon.
Right.
It's like you guys had to lock in for 1 quarter and you would have been 3-0.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think they had a chance. They had one last drive, and Derek Carr throws a pick. Game over.
Let's see
And
here. Yep, that was an intercept. 2 plays they had, and when they got the ball, they had a minute left.
yep. And I remember I started Derek Carr this week because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, well, he's the number 1 fantasy quarterback, technically.
Right.
Oh, boy. I watched the
Um,
last bit of that game. He throws that pick, and I'm like, okay, well,
and
better luck next week.
breaking news here: Justin Herbert X-rays negative. It will continue. It was an ankle issue, just to be clear, and according to Bleacher Report, will continue to monitor ahead of Week 4. And I did see a lot of people kind of dogging on the Chargers, being like, "You knew he was banged up. Why'd you put him out there?" It's like, okay, well, if he's like, if the other option is Taylor Heineke, no offense, it's not like I don't know. It's not like for the Browns where they have Jameis Winston, where you're like, okay, maybe we could get a win here. Or the Cowboys who have Cooper Rush, you're like, maybe. But with Taylor Heineke, it's like, okay, well, you're
Plus,
going to start Justin Herbert.
yeah, and they weren't. I mean, you look at they were up at half.
Yeah.
They're tied after the third quarter. I mean, they had a chance to win that game. And if you have a chance to win it, I mean, if you can keep your quarterback safe and he can give you that push, then you might as well. But
Yeah.
high risk, high reward.
Mm-hmm.
They
But
didn't get the reward.
back to that Eagles game, this actually brings up one of my best performances of the week, and I'm going to give it to Dallas Goddard, who with AJ Brown out, Devonta Smith leaves the game early with a concussion, which if you've seen that hit, wow, that was bad.
Yeah,
I at first I
nasty
thought it would be
hit.
a late hit. I thought, probably should have been called for a late hit, but when you look back, it's like, all right, well, as a receiver, easy for me to say, but I heard this from Chad Ochocinco on his podcast last night. It's like, as a receiver, you got to know you got to go down because you're not getting any more yards. Obviously, it sucks, but like,
I think it's the tough part is I think it came from behind.
yeah,
So that's a rough spot to have a helmet into
yeah.
your the back of your neck.
But then again, I mean, I guess as the defender there, you have to know it's like, all right, well, the ball's gonna go where it's gonna go. Like, I don't really think you need to go in and try and annihilate someone. But
Yeah. If
anyway,
anything, just hit him in the back so it maybe force the ball out.
yeah, go for the ball. Maybe don't go for the guy's head. But Dallas Goddard, 10 catches, 170 yards. I mean, he was insane. He started to go off later in that game. He had a 61-yard catch to set up that Saquon touchdown at the end. So, yeah, that's one of my best performances of the week. He balled his ass out.
This seems to be what we're getting out of tight ends this year because I mean, the league has so many talented receivers now that I feel like the receiving tight end is kind of going away. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but we're seeing a lot more tight ends. A lot of the star tight ends are used a lot more as blockers. And maybe I think I've seen Mark Andrews be used as a decoy as well. I think at this point you're going to see a lot of random performances. I mean, we had Isaiah Likely in week 1, and now we have Dallas Goddard having the best game of his career. It's like it just kind of seems like the tight ends aren't going to have like consistent performances. It's just going to be like if if star receivers are out, if the other team's game plan is to double team your number 1 and 2. There's going to be a lot of openings, so it's like,
yeah. And I mean, that was
it
probably
is.
the best game of Dallas Goddard's career. A guy who's been sitting kind of behind Zach Ertz for a while, or was. I mean, obviously last year Zach Ertz wasn't there, but so it's kind of great to see that, honestly, from a guy who's kind of been a threat to my Cowboys for a while now. But and especially they really needed him to step up there with Devonta going out and AJ Brown, missing his second straight game. But yeah, Saints, I don't know what to say other than you kind of just blew it. Again, Alvin Kamara not really doing much. Defense was honestly looking really great because you forced 2 turnovers from Jalen Hurts, but Saquon finishes with 147 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I've never been like high on Saquon, unfortunately. I'll say that here. I just think that he was probably one of the most exciting players I've ever seen come out of college football. Just because I watched him at Penn State, and he was the first player where I turned on a TV, didn't know what game was on, and I looked and I was like, who is that?
Right.
I'm like, that's Saquon Barkley, and I wanted him on the Browns, but we picked Baker over him, which
Right.
I'm okay with.
Can you imagine if Baker went to the Giants, though? Eesh. That would have been worse.
He might not be on the Bucs right now.
No, he might not. Well, because then he'd have to sit behind Eli. And then Saquon would have been getting handoffs from Tyrod Taylor. Yeah. So,
but it all worked out, and I mean, back to my thing with Saquon. I kind of just went on a tangent, but he really hasn't been able to produce like he did his rookie year, and I feel like I thought that was going to be his floor. I thought that he was going that like his potential was going to be unlimited, Mr. Unlimited. And I mean, he's had too many injuries, and I didn't think that this year he'd be able to come back right away. I think it's hard to count him out like right now. I
Well,
think he might be
you're
one of the
thinking just what
best.
the Giants are thinking right now. They're like, I watched that. I watched their offseason Hard Knocks, and that's kind of the vibe I was getting. Is they wanted to keep Saquon, but for the right price,
Hmm.
they just couldn't really get anything done. And then Philly took them for a little bit. I think it was just like a little bit more than what the Giants were offering. And like you said, the Giants think of the same. Like the Giants think of the same thing. It's like you've been hurt. You've been explosive. You were really good your rookie year. You had some solid years, but you don't know. But
Yeah, you're
I would
thinking that
say,
maybe his rookie year is his ceiling, as
right.
opposed to what we thought was his floor. But now, I mean, he has the potential. It's kind of hard to argue him not being like the best running back in the league currently.
No, right now he's leading the NFL with 351 rushing yards and is tied with 4 rushing touchdowns. So
With
now I want to say he's
Kamara.
probably tied there with Alvin Kamara. So you kind of just put the team on his back there.
Hmm.
I'm very excited for Eagles Buccaneers next week. Maybe I shouldn't be because that Buccaneers defensive line needs some help. We could get to that next.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, what a game! I mean, I know that you like Baker Mayfield, but I've been
Mm-hmm.
kind of high on this Bo Nix train, and the first 2 weeks, I was in the caboose. I was about ready to jump, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I mean, I'm back on. I mean, Bo Nix put together a really solid performance.
Yep.
The Broncos defense looked like it did in Peyton Manning era.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like I'm not going to count out Baker Mayfield. I think he's still one of the best quarterbacks currently, but he just really couldn't get anything done against the
Yeah.
defensive line.
And I'll give one of my best one of my best performances goes to Vance Joseph, the defense coordinator for the Broncos. Probably one of his best schemed games as a Broncos defense coordinator uh, in his tenure there the last couple of years. He uh, he schemed very well against Baker. I watched that whole game. There's a lot of times that they're forcing uh, Baker the Bucks into third and long. We're talking like third and 13, third and 14, because they usually sacked him on second down or first.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Baker was sacked 7 times. He did throw that interception. Other than that, you said, you put in the doc that he was MIA. He was 25 for 33, 163 yards, touchdown to pick. I personally think he did what he could. But again, getting more into that, then the Broncos they didn't gamble on third down when it was third 14, third and 15. There was multiple times where they only rushed 3 guys and then they put 8 people in coverage. And I think that was perfect because then Baker has nowhere to throw the ball. He has to, do a check down or has to force a ball that, can't get completed to guys like Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. So I don't know what to say. Vance Joseph, Bo Nix had a very solid game. We could talk more about that. But even with a Bucks offensive line that was missing a few pieces. 7 sacks in any game is crazy.
Yeah, they made it under my worst performances of the week because I mean, yeah, you can't give up 7 sacks. And I thought I was looking at the stats just now. I think it's really interesting. Both running backs had 9 carries for 70 yards.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah.
Very balanced. But the only
Yep.
difference was that Bo Nix was. I mean, you look at his stat line just as a passer. You're like
Mm-hmm.
25 for 36, 216, no touchdowns, no picks. It's like okay. But he
But that
also
jersey,
rushed.
yeah,
He
that
also
jersey
rushed
stayed clean though. 0
mhm,
sacks.
0 sacks. He rushed 40 for 47 yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
No interceptions. I mean, what more can you ask for from a rookie quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
And they win by almost 20 points.
Yep. And they won the turnover battle. Obviously, Baker has that interception, and then the Bucks also fumbled. I forget who. It might have been. It might have been Bucky. I can't remember, but Bucky Irving. It was kind of cool to see him get more of the more of the workload for the Bucs because I think he's going to be good for them. But that's right. Cade Otton, their tight end, fumbled. And I remember that's kind of when the game was over. But
he led with receptions too. That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's obviously an off game for the Bucs there. They're kind of injured on both fronts. You mentioned, part of the reason that Bo Nix stays his jersey stays clean there is because Vita Vea is not there on that defensive line, which people need to start giving more praise to him because he has quietly been like one of the best nose tackles in the league like since he came in.
Yeah, I mean him with that Bucs defensive line.
Oh gosh.
What?
Christian could talk all day about the Bucs defense in 2021.
Yeah, when they won Tom Brady that Super Bowl, they gifted him a Super Bowl. That might be one of the best front sevens I've ever seen in my life.
I don't blame you there.
There's not even a team that comes close, in my opinion. I mean, Legion of Boom had really good corners and safeties as well. Whereas, the Bucs defense still had, Antoine Winfield and others.
No, I know who you're talking about. There was a couple. Sean Murphy Bunting was still there, I think.
Yeah. But, it was superstars all along that defensive line. And, yeah, they lost pretty much everybody, but Vita Vea stayed, and he's still been an underrated and very good defensive lineman.
Collectively, we could probably name that whole front seven.
They had Vita Vea, of course. They had JPP,
who was in the twilight, had probably the one of the best years of his twilight years there.
They had Ndamukong Suh on that line, who that was right before he started to, hit his decline.
Yeah.
So he was still playing really well. And then they had Shaq. Is it Shaq Barrett?
Yep.
Shaquille? Yeah.
Led the league in sacks that year, right?
The year before.
The year before.
21 sacks the year before. Didn't win Defensive Player of the Year.
And then probably the best.
Levante David.
Yeah, probably the best linebacker duo in a while with Levante David and
White.
And Devin White. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you stop that?
They probably had some of the best players in their position across the entire league.
Right. But more recently, I think it was great. It was kind of great to see the Broncos actually look competent, even though it was against my Baker Mayfield-led Bucs. They play the Jets next week, so I think that'll be an interesting game. And the Bucs have a perfect, backs against the wall opportunity to get a win against the Eagles next week, which I think is doable. Despite I think they have to go to Philly for that. Nope, they get to host them, so I think that's a very winnable game.
Oh yeah.
Let's see here.
Speaking of winnable games, I really thought the Raiders were going to take down the Panthers.
I thought Andy Dalton was going to play well. Don't get me wrong, I thought he was going to play better than Bryce Young, but I did not expect this kind of performance. I agree with you. I thought the Raiders were just going to dominate this game.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw Antonio Pierce after the game. He was like,
"Yeah, dude, that is what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear from a coach, though."
And I think he thought his team went into that game lazy. They thought, "Oh, this is a free win." And he said, "Some of my players made business decisions, so I think we're going to make business decisions going forward."
Yeah. I don't know what specifically that means, but
I think trades are open. I think we might see some names drop from the roster.
Who?
I think they think this is an unacceptable loss.
Yeah, because it was at home too. Okay, but on the Raiders, who can you trade away? You guys already probably have one of the bottom rosters in the league outside of, your stars like Devontae Adams and Max Crosby, but who's tradable? I guess everyone if they're not that good.
Yeah, and if the star players are not buying in, I think they're going to be more of a problem than a help.
But you
But I
know,
guess that's all behind the scenes.
yeah, I mean, less on the Raiders. The Panthers beat them 36-22, mainly in part due to Andy Dalton throwing for 3 touchdowns and 319 yards.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of my best performances. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't see like I said, I didn't see a performance like this coming.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
it was I think it was like his 8th game in his career with like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the last one was in like 2021.
yeah. But I mean, this is, if you remember what I said last week, this is kind of what I expected. I don't know if you know the Ewing effect.
Well,
I think we
you've
talked about
explained it to
this.
me a couple times, but for the viewers,
Yeah, so it's usually when a star player is injured, it's usually about an injury. Um, the team will play really well for a few games following that injury because everybody's like, "Oh, this star player's out. You got to count this team out." And it's almost as if the team bands around that player and says, "Okay, we're going to play better." I
mm-hmm.
mean, that's what happened with Patrick Ewing, and I think he was in college that one season where he was injured and the team was turned into the best team in the country. And then there is a decline though because after
Mm-hmm.
that they were terrible. And then this is kind of what we're seeing. I don't know if it's not really a Ewing effect, but we see it when like a star player or starting player is benched. The backup will usually come in and play their mind out for a game or two. We
Mm-hmm.
saw it with Mike White in on the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw it with Davis Mills when he started for the Texans. He had 2 games that he was actually good. I mean, we saw it last year with Joshua Dobbs and the Vikings. I mean, I think people are going to overreact to this a lot because I mean, I saw people already say they're like, the media is trying to tell you that Bryce Young isn't the problem. Well, Andy Dalton just came in and won the game, and I think he is the problem. It's like, no. We need to see in 3 weeks, give it the 3 week rule. All right. If Andy
You're
Dalton
really
is,
hanging on it. You're hanging on
if
the
Andy,
3-week rule.
it's a thing. We saw it with the Saints.
It's
I
true.
mean, if Andy Dalton keeps his pace up and he's an MVP candidate in 3 weeks, sure, Bryce Young's the problem. But I guarantee either next game or the game after, you're going to see a 3 interception performance from Andy Dalton, and they're going to lose by probably 30 points because it is still the Panthers.
Well, I think you make a very fair point there, because next week they are at home against the Bengals, which I think honestly, they'll probably lose that game, but it'll be closer than their next one, where they have to go into Chicago. That is your 3 interception game, because the Bears
Mm-hmm.
defense has been playing extremely well. Probably
Yeah,
one of the best defenses in the league, top 2, with the Vikings.
with
So
with the worst offense in the league.
yeah, sadly. But no, I completely agree with you. I think for the most part, also it's a sense of the other players are like, okay, like we're making a change. And not that it's probably not that they don't like Bryce Young, but that they know that now the person that's probably in the best position to be making plays for them is there, and they're more bought in.
Yeah, I mean, I could
That's
see that. I mean, it also, yeah, I don't even know. I don't even
I
know what to
mean,
think about Andy Dalton, just because it's it's tough to just say this like after one game
mm-hmm.
because everybody has players just have random performances. I mean, you look at gosh, what was that one quarterback for the Matt Flynn or something
Yeah,
back for the
for the
Packers? He had
Packers.
like a 5 touchdown game or something.
Yeah, that was in like the last week when the Packers had already locked up a playoff spot. This was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
But they sat Aaron Rodgers, and yeah, he had 5 touchdowns, and then he signed like a massive deal with the Seahawks right before they drafted Russell Wilson. And
Fleeced them.
yeah, I'll have to look up that deal, but keep talking.
Yeah, I mean, you see this where these quarterbacks. I mean, this is my thing. This is what I was going to say before I zoned out there for a sec. Andy Dalton is a veteran, so yeah, he has had experience. He's led teams to success in the past. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. He could be the game changer just with his experience. But I also think we've seen him have bad experiences too, where yeah, he'll have good games, but it's usually sprinkled in between a lot of really bad games.
That Matt Flynn contract, by the way, not as bad as I remember it being, but 3 years, $19.5 million. But then again, you do have to remember that was off one game.
Yeah.
So you're paying a guy over $6 million per year based on, and this was in like, I want to say 2010. Yeah, early 2010s. So, and then he ends up being the backup behind Russell Wilson. So paying your backup quarterback $6 million, still not great. But what was I going to say? I think with Andy Dalton, again, I feel like we're dogging on him, but we do want to see more. Obviously, I think we will see more against the Bengals. That's actually crazy. I remember now that he has 2 revenge games coming up, really, against the Bengals and the Bears, teams he both quarterbacked for. Bengals obviously is known for them, but the thing that kind of you have to come down to earth with about these backups is like, okay, yes, they played well in this first game, but if they played well in this game, then why weren't they starting on other teams all along?
Mm-hmm. Why aren't they starting on this team?
Yeah,
specifically.
And I get, well, mainly because they have the number 1 pick and everything. But you're telling me he couldn't go to he couldn't go to the Raiders and be their starter. Or what's another team, like, I don't know, maybe the Titans? You're telling me he couldn't go there and be the starter there?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he's on a multi-deal contract, and he signed with the Panthers last year or the year before, whenever it was, but still.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, there's a reason he's a backup, and sure, it's cool that he won this game, and I don't want to take away from him because I love the red rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Always been a fan. But at some point, reality is going to hit, and he's going to come back down to earth.
Yeah, so Andy Dalton, I hope you're not listening to this because we're apparently your biggest haters this week. Good win, very solid win, but
I don't hate Andy Dalton. I hate the Panthers, okay? I'd root for your success if you weren't on the worst organization in the league.
That's true. If anything, well, then you should root for their success even more because you got to feel bad for that they have the worst organization. But moving on to our last surprising game, we have. I mean, you want to take this one away with your Browns?
Yeah, Daniel Jones. I mean, everybody's hating on Daniel Jones. Why'd they give him this contract? Oh, he's not their. Daniel Jones just put up a legacy game, really proving why he deserves to be their starter. And of course, it was against my Browns. I mean, it seemed like he could do no wrong. I mean, Malik Neighbors, at this point, I think has he not cemented himself as the best? I feel like he's ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point. The best rookie wide receiver.
I would agree. So he ends up on my best. So I kind of comboed Dallas Goedert, Malik Neighbors, and a couple other receivers just because their games were all worth noting, and I wanted to kind of combo them into a best performance. So these are really my best receiver performances. Malik Neighbors ends up on there, 8 catches, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. Both the first touchdown, by the way, was insane.
Oh yeah, he wasn't that the one where he just grabbed it over the dude?
No, that's when he was full extension on the back of the end zone, pretty much leaning out to get the toes in, like a toe drag.
I believe both. He had 2 catches that drive that were catch of the week.
Yeah. And yeah, you talk about Daniel Jones, 24 for 34, 236 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Giants really altogether played well with Devin Singletary, who was on my bench, rushing it for 65 yards and a touchdown on 16 carries.
4 catches for 48 yards.
Yeah. So that I'll probably regret that. Although I think I'm shaping out pretty well in my sleeper league, but in our league, I'm currently losing, and I need Joey B to ball out. But more on your Browns, who their defense has kind of been getting cooked. It kind of got cooked this week. But Deshaun Watson, I mean, your thoughts, I guess.
I put him on my worst performances list, and I know the stat sheet's not going to show it because you look at it, over 50% completion, 196 yards and 2 touchdowns, no picks. That's not bad, honestly. Like, that's a good game. But I believe one of those touchdowns was in garbage time, at the end. But it didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the first drive they had of the game, which was like a perfect drive, he looked incredible. They scored a touchdown. The rest of the game was unwatchable. I mean, he had almost 20 incompletions. I would probably say that 18 of those were not even in the vicinity of a Browns player. He probably should have been picked off like 3 times that game. The offensive line is bad. I'll say this. Like, they're very injured. Jedrick Wills came back for the first game since like early 2023.
Oof.
He got injured again, of course. He's a
he's
top
going to
10
be
draft pick.
He might be a bust.
Yeah, no, he's a bust at this point. He can't stay healthy. They lost another. I think Wyatt Teller got injured during that game as well. So they're down.
He's been good. He's been good for them.
They're down their best offensive lineman. They're down both their tackles. I think they were down a guard as well. And then Deshaun doesn't really make it better. He walks into sacks. I think it was every third down play. It felt like he was getting sacked. And it's like, at some point, you just gotta do something. You gotta help it out. I mean, if he didn't have Amari Cooper to bail him out, we would probably be looking at the stat line a lot worse. Amari Cooper had to play his mind out.
Yeah, and based on this performance, I mean, we got to start questioning that defense. I know Daniel Jones and Malik Neighbors, they have that awesome connection now. Like you said, Malik Neighbors looking like one of the best, or probably the best rookie wide receiver. But even so, like the Browns defense, that offensive line for the Giants is not great. Daniel Jones, I know he has a great game here, but not overall, not a great quarterback in my opinion. I've seen him implode many times, and he's probably going to implode, hopefully, against the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football this week. But you only sack him 2 times when you have Myles Garrett, JOK. I mean,
and I know Myles Garrett's been dealing with an injury. He was, I can't remember if he was a full participant or limited in practice this week. He has a foot injury. He also went down at one point in that game as well. I mean, I think he just needs to kind of focus on getting healthy. But besides him, you're kind of seeing that the Browns defense lost a lot of players. I mean, Zadarius Smith, they're good. I mean, the defensive backs looked okay at times. It was great to see Grant Delpit get in the mix. He, from LSU a few years ago, he has been injured a bit. But I think we're just kind of seeing them, like the defensive scheme is just not really working at this point.
Yeah, they're going to have to make some changes. Like I said, the Giants are going up against the Cowboys on Thursday night. I will be very nervous for that, unreasonably nervous for that. And the Browns take on the Raiders on the road next week. So I think that's a kind of a big game for both teams, really. They're trying to both sitting at 1-2 right now, kind of having some embarrassing losses. They're trying to get back on the right side of 500.
Actually, all those teams are 1-2 that we just talked about.
It's
Cowboys true. And the Giants.
Okay, well, that's it for the surprising games of the week. We'll move on to our games of the week.
Oh, so banner switched. That's cool.
Oh yeah. First one we'll hit on is really that I stopped watching this game because the Niners were up big, and I was like, all right, well, sorry, Matthew Stafford, you have to play on this shitty Rams team now without Nakua or Kupp. Boy, was I wrong. They really put it together in that fourth quarter. I'll look at it here. Going into the fourth quarter, they were down a touchdown, and then 49ers kick a field goal with less than 12 minutes left to go up 24-14, and the Rams put together 3 scoring drives to win 27-24. Again, like I said, I didn't watch the end of this just because I thought it was done, but did you see any more, I guess, in that fourth quarter?
I mean, I think it was, gosh, I always forget coaches. Rams coach,
Sean
Sean
McVay.
McVay. He came into the press conference afterwards. The first thing he said, he's just walks up the podium. He's like, holy shit.
Yeah. And
all the reporters are like, "Oh, yeah, it's surprising." He's like, "I cannot believe we just won that game."
By the way, the Rams, they go on 4 straight scoring drives down the stretch.
Yeah, I think at one point they were down like 21-7 or something.
Yep, 21-7.
And I mean, Brock Purdy, okay, to be fair, is without George Kittle, without Deebo Samuel, without Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
They're super beat up, but I mean, he lets Juwan Jennings, which do you have him on your best performances?
I do. Again, another one of those receivers, probably the best receiver performance of this week. But I wanted to combo all the other guys that need their respect. But Juwan Jennings,
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 tugs, in an offense that was absent of Deebo, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk. Oh wait, no, Brandon Ayuk was there, and he's still a fraud. Just wanted to make that known. Bro is fraud of the century so far.
Yeah, I'm loving this Brandon Ayuk season because it really backs up what I said on the first episode of this podcast. I think he thinks he's better than he actually is. And here we are. He should have been the number 1 option. You have all the excuses before, the 49ers they have such a great offense. There's so many weapons. You're no longer without your top 3 options. You are the number 1 option. There's nobody beside you. I mean, Juwan Jennings on another team is probably a wide receiver 3-4. I mean, you have Jordan Mason starting as your running back, who has looked pretty good, actually.
Yeah, he finished 19 carries, 77 yards.
But Brandon, you got to catch some balls here. Like, I know they're probably double covering you, but you have to get open. Like, if you're supposed to be all these other great receivers, they find a way to catch balls.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson, he's getting double, triple teamed every single play.
Because he's their only weapon right now.
Yeah, and he's still catching 100 yards a game. I mean, come on now.
Brandon Ayuk, 5 catches for 48 yards. So,
his best game of the season.
10 targets, though.
10 targets, 5 catches.
Yeah. I'll have to watch that back because maybe some of those are uncatchable. But when Brock Purdy completes 22 of his 30 passing attempts for 292 yards and 3 touchdowns, I mean, and Juwan Jennings goes off, like, you need to step it up.
Yeah, I mean, there was like
his longest catch, by the way, for Brandon Ayuk was 12 yards.
Yeah, so. I just don't know what to think. Because, I mean, Brock Purdy played an insanely good game. You say that stat line, like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that has to be top 3 this week.
Yeah. And Juwan Jennings, by the way, so 11 receptions, 12 targets. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
But
if anybody had him in fantasy for some reason, I mean, hey, maybe that's probably a good idea with all the injuries. But he put up almost 50 points. So whoever had him, he better not lose that week, or else
that's
deserve to be flamed.
But even with the Niners kind of imploding, and I had our good buddy Tyler Coe text me because we were watching that Cowboys game when it was kind of getting close late. I was like, "Your thoughts?" And he was like, pretty much just F Jake Moody because he missed that kick at the close towards the end when, let me see here, it was Niners were leading 24-17. You kick that field goal, you're up by 10 with 3 minutes left. What was that field goal? That field goal, 55 yards. do want to look back at that, Tyler. Maybe that's a little too harsh. 55
No,
yards
that's a
is,
chip shot nowadays. That's what we've been saying.
well, I mean, still, 55 yards is no gimme. Let's be fair. On the
Kyrie
road,
Fairburn missed a 50-yarder too this week.
yeah. But either way, we got to give it to while Brock Purdy had his great game, maybe you want to blame it on Jake Moody, which I don't think is very fair.
No, it's hard to stop a team that's on a roll. And the Rams they had all the momentum. I mean, you can't keep a team at bay like that.
Mm-hmm. Kyron Williams in the second half puts together 2 rushing touchdowns. He finishes with 89 yards on 24 carries. Matthew Stafford with a very solid 16 for 25, 221 yards and a touchdown. I think that, I mean, whenever we count Matthew Stafford out, like, oh, maybe he's too old for this, whatever, he makes work with guys like Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. I mean, Jordan
Whittington.
Tutu Atwell was the leading receiver, by the way, with 93 yards on 4 catches. So, way to go, Matthew Stafford. I mean, what a first win of the season for the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, they needed it. And
they needed it bad.
And now I think the 49ers are in a desperate need for a win because they got pushed to 1-2.
Yeah, and they'll get it next week. They host the Patriots next week. The Niners do. And the Rams go on the road to Chicago for the Bears. So I think that's actually kind of a sneaky good game there as well.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't even have the Patriots on here. Patriots-Jets game.
Yeah, well, when that happens on Thursday and we record this on Monday, we tend to forget about it. Plus, that was a blowout win by the Jets.
Yeah, but that was another great game where, Will McDonald's kind of earning his bread.
Yep.
And Breece Hall, I think that was another insane game by him.
Mm-hmm. Let me look here real quick. Will McDonald currently second in the league in sacks with 5.
That's kind of crazy. Aaron Rodgers looked really good again.
Mm-hmm.
Al Lazard had a great game.
Yep. Breece Hall, we can quickly sum up his stats real quick. He had 54 rushing yards and a touchdown, and then 29 receiving yards, so that hit. Braylon Allen, I mean, they're quickly becoming probably one of the scariest backfields in the league.
Yeah, and honestly, to bring up Braylon Allen a little more, I mean, from Wisconsin, he kind of an underrated player. I think everybody's kind of looking at all these other. It wasn't a strong rookie running back class, but I think
they're like last year.
Yeah, but I think Braylon Allen has looked really good in his very limited snaps. I mean, the stat sheet probably doesn't show just how much of an impact he is.
Yeah, he's becoming kind of a bigger part of that offense since week 3, taking more snaps, getting more touches. Mm-hmm. I'll look at his stats real quick. He actually finished as the leading rusher with 1 more yard over Breece Hall, 11 carries, 55 yards. And then the receiving game, 3 catches for 13 yards. So he had an even better game against the Titans the week before.
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, so that quickly sums it up. We saw Drake May, and we know why Drake May is not the starter. He did not look great. His first passing attempt was almost an interception. And that Patriots offensive line, if you think the Browns offensive line is bad, just be glad you are not a Patriots fan.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of tough. Drake May sitting on the bench the whole game, and they're just like, all right, get out there. It's like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Go pretty much get killed. He got sacked twice on his one drive, so.
But I mean, it's not like Jacoby Brissett looked great either. So
no, he was not great. Yeah.
I mean, the Jets defense is actually really good. Let's be honest.
No,
they have the best corner in the
sure.
league.
And even without Jermaine Johnson, like we said, Will McDonald, our guy, is stepping up, and we always love to see that because.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said Jermaine Johnson. That reminded me about the worst performance of probably the entire week by anybody. I'm sorry, Ramondre Stevenson, but what?
Oh, that's good thing you bring that guy up.
Because I mean, Jermaine Johnson's out. The defensive line doesn't. I mean, CJ Mosley's out too. You're like, oh, the running game. This is probably the best situation Ramondre could have had. He's averaging 80 yards a week at that point. He puts up a goose egg in fantasy, pretty much. 0.3. Honestly,
Yeah,
would have rather him have 0 points than 0.3.
because he fumbled too. He wasn't already having a great game, but that fumble,
Yeah.
I mean,
Which,
yeah.
and honestly, he had what, 6 carries for 20 yards or something, 22
Mm-hmm.
yards. Does that sound right? Which is not bad. I mean, it just seemed like they didn't want to run him at all. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened. It didn't seem like he was injured, but I feel like he was on the sideline for probably a good 40 minutes of that game.
I mean, how can you not? He was just you
He was
couldn't do
averaging
anything
4
in the
yards a
run game.
carry. I feel
Yeah,
like every time they handed the ball off to him, it was working. It was
yeah,
just,
but they got down early though. They couldn't really do any. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of the mindsets I think that's keeping some of these teams back. If you're
mm,
sure you're down by like 2 scores early on, but there's a lot of game left. It's like
mm,
you might as well get your offense moving. And if you can get your offense moving, you just need defensive stops,
right.
which they were getting at a point. But yeah, Ramondre Stevenson, like I could have got more fantasy points than you. Come on
Okay.
now.
Okay.
You
Well,
don't think I could have rushed for 3 yards in a whole game?
no, but someone that did rush for a whole lot more than 3 yards. We've got Derrick Henry and the Ravens
Yeah.
against my Dallas Cowboys. Quickly, I'll just get out of the way. Derrick Henry gets one of my last spots in the best performance list. I want to say over 150 yards, a couple touchdowns there. Um, I'll go on my soapbox here about the Dallas Cowboys real quick. So, a lot of people are going to think, oh, well, you should be happy. They almost came back. No. First of all, that's probably the worst thing is that I got hope that they were going to come back. And it did look real because the Ravens are notorious for blowing leads, big leads. But the Cowboys, much like the Iowa State Cyclones, are not built to play from behind. I know that's a stupid thing to say. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, no team's built to win from behind." It's like, well, if you outside of the Cyhawk game, you consistently look at teams like Iowa State and the Dallas Cowboys. When they get behind by 2 scores, they don't play well. They pretty much pack it up, and that's what we were doing for most of that game. You have Micah Parsons, who was getting juked out of his shoes. He couldn't find his way out of a phone booth if he tried by Lamar Jackson. Multiple times, Lamar just jukes him out. He can't make plays. The whole front seven really can't make plays up front. That's why Derrick Henry rushed for 150 yards. Lamar doesn't really have to do anything through the air. And even when he does, you have guys in the secondary that are getting cooked by receivers. Trayvon Diggs goes on Twitter last night and says, "My bad, Cowboys Nation. I should have made a play there." He was referring to the last play, pretty much the play that sealed the deal, where it was a catch by Zay Flowers to give the Ravens a first down and make it so they don't have to punt back to the Cowboys to give them a chance to, I believe it would have been to push the game into overtime. They were checked out pretty much for the first half. And again, Mike Zimmer doesn't adjust defensively, and the Cowboys offensively couldn't really answer. I don't even know what to think about this team right now, mainly because Cowboys fans should not be happy with, oh, well, we almost won. I honestly probably would have preferred losing like 38-6 or 28-6, how we were losing. So
Yeah,
that's
I
my
mean,
soapbox.
yeah, I understand the frustration. It's obviously apparent on the sideline too. You have,
Yeah.
like CD screaming at Dak. You have
Yep.
all the, defensive players screaming at each other, the coaches. It's like, it's rough. I had the Cowboys on my worst performances, not because I feel like you look at it in a vacuum, it's a good game because the Ravens, sure, they're 0-2, but this is a team that is extremely hungry to get a win because they don't want to drop to 0-3.
Mm-hmm.
They were one of the best teams. They were the best team in the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
Although, yeah, they lost before they made it to the Super Bowl again. and they honestly didn't lose a lot of people. They gained great players, and they're sitting there wondering why they're 0-2. They really want to prove to everybody who's already counting them out. The whole NFL world's like, okay, the Ravens are frauds. They're not even going to make the playoffs this year. So the AFC North is too hard to win if you're down 0-2. But
Mm-hmm.
I think they went out. They wanted to prove that, and the Cowboys, I mean, at times looked really good. But I think as a whole, this is a game that you kind of have to close down because you're
Mm-hmm.
also coming off a really bad loss.
At home, we've lost our first 2 games at home now.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing in here is I want to say they didn't force a turnover from the Ravens, which that obviously would have helped if we could do. Obviously, you want to force turnovers and win the game.
Yeah.
Usually, if you win the turnover battle, Dak has that pick. That's whatever. Honestly, I was really upset with how Dak played for the first 3 quarters, and then obviously he puts it together in the fourth quarter. They score 3 straight touchdowns. That's awesome and everything. Dak and the rest of the offense, I need that in the first half because we were relying on Brandon Aubrey, who's our MVP right now, and it just makes you wonder. It's like, okay, well, if we were playing like this the whole game, regardless of what the defense was doing, we could have been competitive in this game. But when you're relying on having to go on 4 straight scoring drives in the fourth quarter to send the game into overtime or win the game, it just defensively things just need to change because they are not forcing turnovers at the same rate that they were last year. I know Deron Bland's still out, but we got to find a solution. And again, also just the same thing that's happened in the last 2 weeks. Mid-game adjustments on defense. We haven't been doing that. Zimmer hasn't been doing that. The guys on defense don't seem bought in. And this has been the problem for the last couple of years, regardless of who the defense coordinator has been, is we just get the ball ran over us. And
Mm-hmm.
it's frustrating, especially when you go up against, it feels like there's no game plan when you go up against guys like Lamar, Derrick Henry, last week, Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy just to think about the defense even being a problem, just considering how good the defense is, just talent wise.
And yeah, and it honestly, it makes me it honestly is kind of eye opening to why we didn't pay Micah this offseason. And if you watched him play yesterday, he can't he has not made a big play in the last 2 weeks. And you give the money to your playmakers. I still love Micah. I think he still has that playmaking ability in him, obviously, but in times where we need he's like the Avatar. In times where we need him the most, he vanishes. I want to say he probably doesn't have a sack yet this year. I'm going to look that up, but it's defensively something needs to change, and offensively, Dak's trying to play out of his mind. He does currently lead the league in passing yards, but we need to get CD involved more, and we also need to figure out the run game. But I'm honestly fearful that we won't be able to do that because we have guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Deuce Vaughn, and I don't even know how to say his name, Dalde, whatever, Rico back there. And Rico was the leading rusher with like 32 yards. So
yeah, I think that's my biggest thing is they don't have a established run game at all. And I mean, I think we're at the point in the league where teams cannot succeed without a good run game. I mean, I was talking about the resurgence of the star running backs. That seems to be coming back. I mean, Saquon's back. You have Alvin Kamara. Derrick Henry was a star, and his team ended up winning. I mean, It really does seem like the factor in these games is which team can get the run game going.
right.
It seemed like the Patriots couldn't get anything going through Ramondre Stevenson, and they lost by a lot. I mean, that's just sure that's always been the case, but it seems like currently it's like way more important than it's been.
So Micah does have a sack, but it came in that Browns game. Since then, 2 back-to-back games without a sack. Yeah, it's just he really just hasn't been doing anything. And I'm never been one of those guys to be like this, like the shut up and dribble guy. But maybe we should get off our podcast and get in the film room if you want to get your money. If you want to get a contract extension, I kind of feel like that the skit from with Shane Gillis in it when he's on the plane and he's reclining. You seen that?
Oh,
Yeah.
please, sir. The seats in the upright position. Signs on.
Yeah.
So what? The plane's gonna crash because I moved my seat back 2 inches.
Yeah, and the guy's like, he's like, well, Shane's like, dude, it's kind of embarrassing. I can't really fit. He's like, yeah, maybe you should take better care of your body. Like, and then Shane characters go, are you a psycho, dude?
Are I bet your parents are really proud of you. Are you? What a good skit.
I think the best line in that, honestly, though, is when he reclines back up and he's like, you know what? It does feel safer. Big Shane Gillis fans over here.
Yeah.
Makes me laugh. I don't know what makes me laugh more, him or how the Cowboys defense has been playing. But
it should make you laugh.
But moving on into next week, the Cowboys, of course, like I mentioned, take on the Giants. If we lose to the Giants, we historically with Dak the last couple of years have rocked against the Giants. We need this. This is the biggest get right game in the last couple of seasons. Personally, we need to beat the Giants. Mm-hmm. It's not only is it a divisional game, but it would get us back to 500. I need the defense to look better. I need the offense to look more consistent. This is the biggest Cowboys game in the last couple years in terms of how it'll look on the season. Because if we fall to 1-3,
pack it up.
That means because we've won 12 games the last couple of years, obviously, like we went 12-5. And I think this team can go 12-5, maybe like 11-6. But even then, if we fall to 1-3, that means we have to go 10-3 the rest of the stretch, or 11-2.
It's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah. God, Cowboys, I love you, but you raise my blood pressure way more than it needs to be.
I think we're both in the same boat with our teams.
Either way.
At least I expect the Browns to do bad. Best thing about being a Browns fan is you never have high hopes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of sick of the notion. Like, I saw a video early this morning. It was like, why do you hate of Stephen A this morning? It's like, why do you hate the Cowboys so much? He's like, oh, their fan base is like, oh, they could pass gas and say it's perfume. They could go 1-16 and the season's over on February 2nd, and then February 3rd they can be like, we're gonna win the Super Bowl next year, though. And I'm like, okay, that is like the generic Cowboys fan. If you're a real Cowboys fan, you know that is not the case. Like, I am a realist when it comes to the Cowboys. I'm not like
one of the few.
Yeah, like, yes, do I have a pinned tweet that says bookmark this, the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl? Yes, but that's because I lost a bet with Christian and I had to do that. But
you can't tell people that.
Well,
you made that off your own free will.
But no, I'm in the realistic Cowboys fan group where I'm not just going to delusionally be like, oh, well, this is our year. I'll do it for the memes, but I actually know ball, so, and I know what the Cowboys are like, so.
Yeah, I'm a realist, so when people are like, wow, this is the Browns' year. They have the best defense in the league, like they were a few years ago. I was like, come on now, we're going to miss the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did.
Yeah, so, but a team that definitely has not missed the playoffs last couple of years and legitimately could win the Super Bowl again this year, the Chiefs get a questionable win last night.
Yeah. And I think people are really going to focus on one singular play because I think they think that the win against the Bengals was bought and sold by the refs because of a singular defensive pass interference call late in the game,
which was valid. That
which
is
was
a pass.
valid.
Yep.
And then, unfortunately, all these people that are screaming, that wouldn't have been called against the Chiefs, had their wish come true when there was a defensive pass interference in the end zone against Kyle Pitts late in the game. That wasn't called. But if
I texted Tyler about that, and I said, personally, yes, I think it's a 50-50 call, in my opinion, but also I think what the corner's trying to do is he's trying to go for the push him out of bounds because he thinks he's about to get mossed.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things where you do have to turn your head around at least, or at least hit him when the ball is like after it's caught.
Yep.
I think this is one of those where on the field you should be able to throw a flag, and I think maybe they held the flag too long and there wasn't a line judge really looking at it, and you get away with one there.
It's a lot of these scenarios where I almost kind of want a flag to be thrown there, only like because I said it's a 50-50 call in my opinion, and I agree. Maybe it should have, but also I kind of relate this to when it was 2 years ago in the Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs, where you almost don't want that holding call to be called on, was it Juju or whoever it was, because you want to see the Eagles have to drive down the field or give them a chance to drive down the field. I almost want to see Mahomes. I'm not really impressed by Patrick Mahomes' season so far. I almost wanted to see him have a game-winning drive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's doing just enough to win games. I think I wouldn't say he's playing bad this year. I think there's been a lot of picks that have just been unlucky. I think a lot of teams are going to game plan around Patrick Mahomes at this point, and they're just going to try to make his life hell. So he's gonna have to. I think he's being forced to play better than a lot of quarterbacks have to be forced to play. If that makes sense.
And also like Travis Kelce hasn't been what his production has not been there. Who just went? Isaiah Pacheco, he's out. You got to think, how different would this offense be if Hollywood Brown was able to play this year? But yeah, Patrick Mahomes currently sitting with 5 touchdowns and 4 picks on the year. He's still the best quarterback in the league, in my opinion, but I'm just not impressed with how he's been playing this year. And like you said, I think even when you're the top, like you're on the team with, you're the best quarterback on the best team in the league, there's going to be more animosity around defenses that want to give you your worst game. And actually, I'm sure as you were watching that interception was to Justin Simmons. That is his 6th interception against Patrick Mahomes, which is the most of any active player against. Is it just against Mahomes, or is it against a single player?
I mean, that's probably the most against a single player currently.
Yeah, I think that was it too.
Because there honestly hasn't been a lot of like long-term quarterbacks, I guess, that have faced a lot of these corners.
That's true. Like, yeah, I would agree. And that interception, did you watch the whole game, or did you at least watch that? Okay, well, that was not a great throw. He kind of looks like he lofts it into the end zone for the guy that's in there. I forget who was throwing it to, but like just an underthrown ball. Like, it honestly kind of a surprising interception from Mahomes, because you think he is going to lead his receiver into the back of the end zone, but he kind of just lofts it up and underthrown. Justin Simmons is right there, but they still get the win. We didn't really talk about the Falcons offense yet, but they looked just kind of like their stats looked fine. Kirk Cousins, 20 for 29, 190 yards, I want to say, and a touchdown to pick. Bijan was playing all right, but just never really
2 yards a carry for Bijan.
Yeah, I mean, their run game, that Chiefs defense, man, it's something. It's starting to look like Brady and the Patriots, where the defense is helping them out more than Mahomes is at some points.
Yeah, and I think this is my last thing about these. Like, people are going to look at the refs a lot, but I think we're looking at these games in like a vacuum again. I'm back with my vacuums. Call me Dyson. I think you can't put everything on one play. That's unfair to the rest of the team that just played 59 minutes and
Mm-hmm.
a singular second of the game is going to decide it.
Mm-hmm.
No. You give them the pass interference call in the end zone. Sure, they still have to go and score a touchdown. What if they can't do that? I mean, you have Bijan averaging 2 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what if they score a touchdown there? They give Mahomes time and he comes back and scores another one, wins the game anyways. Like, there's so many what ifs when you base it off of one play, where you should just be looking at like what happened throughout the game. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it kind of felt like the Chiefs were just better.
And I mean, you're going to get that from a couple games. So, like, I would say probably every win that the Chiefs have had, especially with their defense, is they play like they've been there before. And especially in this Falcons game, the Falcons haven't, last couple of years, they have not been used to being optimistic, playoff implications, a decent team. The Chiefs are like, especially their defense, like I said, they've been here before. They've been in these tough spots. They know that when they need to come up big, they do. And we haven't talked about yet the last play of the game by Nick Bolton, who
Oh yeah,
has been probably one of the most like underrated defensive guys on that Chiefs defense. Who, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't have his game in that Eagles Super Bowl, Nick Bolton quite possibly could have been Super Bowl MVP.
yeah. I mean, I love Nick Bolton. I scouted him out of Missouri because I thought he was going to fall to the Browns in one of their drafts, and I was like, we need to pick this guy up. He's special, and here he is on the Chiefs. I mean, he looks incredible. He comes up big at the end.
8 total tackles. That tackle, I don't know if it was a tackle for loss on that last play, but that he had ended. Okay, so that was his third tackle for loss. Yeah, third tackle for loss of the game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, incredible. That's Nick Bolton for you.
Chiefs improved to 3-0. A team that, or I guess our last game of the week here. I couldn't really segue into that one, but Lions Cardinals. Honestly, it was. I didn't really watch too much of this one. I just know that the Cardinals kind of had their chance to throughout the game to come back, but they just couldn't really get anything going. And the Lions pick up a crucial second win of the season on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this game was over at half. Felt like
it pretty much was because there was only one score in the entire second half.
Yeah, I mean, this was a fun game for the Lions. If you had any Lions players in fantasy, it was Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Amon-Ra each got a touchdown. I mean, Jared Goff played all right. I think Kyler Murray played pretty good.
Yep. Kyler Murray led the – well, here's kind of a reason why they lost.
I was going to say they couldn't get the run game going.
Yeah. He led the team with 45 yards on 5 carries. James Conner, 1.9 yards per carry.
Yeah.
So
Marvin Harrison found the end zone again. So, I mean, it was one of those games where it's like, I think both of these teams could be really good. Obviously, the Lions. I don't think anybody's going to count the Lions out. But I think the Cardinals have a really solid team. They've put up some good performances. They've just been a hair off here and there.
Yep.
Sound like Matt Campbell there, just a hair off. But
that is true. He says it all the time.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like maybe one play, one drive, they could have come back, brought it to overtime. But I mean, the Lions they're a competitor at this point.
Yeah. I mean, if you give the Lions a chance to kind of ride a 2-score lead, I think their defense is fully capable of doing that. The drive for Arizona in the second half went interception, punt, downs, punt, field goal. So
yeah, it was just like not a lot of offense. I mean, did you say Aiden Hutchinson's stats? Did he get a sack? Yeah.
Kyler Murray was sacked once, and that was by Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson finishes with sack and 6 tackles. Also hit the quarterback twice. So
Yeah, I mean he's just become an incredible player.
mm-hmm.
So I mean I think the Lions have a really balanced team. I think the Cardinals. I mean I'll check their schedule going forward. But
I got it here. They have a chance to bounce back. They host the Commanders next week, but then they have a very entertaining game in week 5 with the Niners. So
themselves.
yeah, they play them. They play themselves, but no, they'll go on the road against the Niners, then on the road against the Packers. So a bit of a rough stretch there, but I think this is a better Cardinals team than it was last year. Just one of those where in a game where you don't get the run game going, and then you have to rely on Kyler Murray. I think you can, but against a defense like the Lions, going to make it even tougher.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those games where I don't have a lot to say about it, just because I think it was kind of what everybody expected. Yeah. It was a good game to watch for that first half, which is why it's on our games of the week, and it's also a game between two teams I think will make the playoffs. Although Cardinals I'll have to see a little bit out of it, but I think they have the potential to make
they're walking that line for me. But Lions, I mean, just a great win for a team that was really close to winning last week at home. And, they go on the road and hold the Cardinals to 13 points.
Yeah. And speaking of, I don't know, Colts. I guess
you put it pretty perfectly with how you titled this one.
What are we going to put on the screen here? Because there's a couple of games here that unfortunately I watched.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunate.
I will hit it real quick. A game that you did leave off was Colts Packers, and
which could also be in here.
Yeah,
but I think that might have been a game of the week just because it was a Malik Willis revenge game.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also another game where Will Levis just threw the game away.
Yeah, and
every week he has something like that.
I want to like Will Levis because he was on Bustin' with the Boys a couple weeks ago. Seemed like a real nice dude. I just don't know if he's going to be able to quarterback in this league. Will Levis finishes 26 of 34, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, he looks competent and he has the weapons in this offense, but the 2 picks are just that one pick six.
Another pick six.
Yeah, the 1 pick six to Jair Alexander is like, dude, if you're throwing it again, Chad Ochocinco was talking about this on his podcast. He goes, if you're going to throw it to that out route to DeAndre Hopkins, one, you got to see that Jair Alexander is sitting on that route. Why is DeAndre Hopkins open? Because Jair Alexander is baiting you into that interception. And if you're going to throw it, don't throw it near, throw it more to the outside. Yeah. So, but what do I know?
It seems like 90% of these games, he's confident. Will Levis he's actually making good plays. He's shown talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's looked good at times, but then you have these bad plays that wouldn't be that bad if they weren't if it wasn't happening this much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that's the one play that really I talked about. Oh, well, you can't blame a loss on one play.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times, Will Levis's losses are because of one really bad play that he does, and it's
and that gave the Packers momentum the rest of the way because that was at the end of the first quarter, and the Packers are up 17-7, and then they go into halftime up 20-7. The Titans are at home. They got to post a comeback when really the Packers were controlling the ball all game. I want to look at time of possession here real quick. The Packers had 5 more minutes of possession, which doesn't really seem like a lot, but I think they really just controlled the ball well. Malik Willis didn't turn the ball over.
He actually played a really solid game.
He did. He's 73 rushing yards on top of 202 passing yards. And with the Titans, before this, both of their losses were 24-17 to the Bears and the Titans, which that loss to the Bears is looking worse and worse every week.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Bears and the Jets, sorry. They didn't lose to themselves.
Yeah.
But
I got you.
Will Levis was beating himself pretty much. Well, Will Levis was not making it easy for him and his squad.
Mayo man.
That's
that's one of those games that it depends on. I guess if you're a Packers fan, it'd be like in a game of the week. But for everybody else, it's like a who cares? You beat the Titans. Will Levis lost again.
Kind of figured that the Packers are going to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, how many more weeks are you giving Will Levis if he keeps making mistakes like these?
I think you just have to keep him. You have to keep using him. I mean, it's like, unfortunately, you don't have anybody else.
Well, I think if they do make a decision, it might come down to, well, listen, they play the Dolphins on Monday Night Football next week without Tua.
Yeah, you have to win. And I guess I haven't seen Skylar Thompson. Do you want to move into the Dolphins Seahawks game?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Skylar Thompson did get hurt in that game. So I don't know if he will be back this upcoming week. I haven't seen anything. But the Dolphins with their third stringers look really bad.
Yeah. I was box score watching that game after DK got that huge touchdown for me in fantasy. Thank you. That was probably really loud. I just slammed my bad.
It's not great.
There we go. DK, thank you. 4 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. But Skylar Thompson was not great even when he was playing in that game. And then Tim Boyle comes in 7 for 13, 79 yards. They did sign Snoop Huntley, though, so they'll probably activate him as soon as they can. But how much better is that offense with Snoop Huntley in there?
I mean, it's definitely better than with Tim Boyle.
Yeah.
That's one of those players that I don't even need to apologize for, Tim. I think you know how bad you are.
But with Tyler Huntley in there, that offense, he plays like a Lamar Jackson. Like he played
Lamar Jackson Jr.
Well, yeah, he filled the role of Lamar when he was out, a little bit 2 years ago, and played pretty well. But that Dolphins offense, yes, that Dolphins offense is not built to play like Lamar Jackson.
No, it's built to play with Tua. But I mean, if there's so many weapons on that team, it's like you should be able to figure it out. I mean, it's one of those things where I think he could add a good amount to the run game at least, which is nice because the running back room has been a little bit fragile this year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add another threat back there, I think it's not hard to get the ball to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. I mean, those are two guys that can get open pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see Tyler Huntley being worse than Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle. I think he just needs to kind of figure out the play, like the plays and the schemes, and
Yeah, I think they could string some wins together more with Tyler Huntley than they can Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. But just getting back to, you just need a guy that can get the ball to Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill. And I don't really think they have that in Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle. Maybe, like you were mentioning, Tyler Huntley's game, his run game brings more of an advantage there to their ground game because Devon Achane hasn't really been great since that week 1 game. So it looks like they just need a switch there because the other 2 guys are not going to do it. They're not going to win games with those guys.
No, yeah, and I know they couldn't start Tyler Huntley right away because they needed to. Obviously, they picked him up this last week, so they needed to get him, comfortable. And
I think it was also just like he needed to, like it was something with elevating him from that practice.
Yeah,
he is on the roster now.
So.
And I want to look at their list real quick. I don't think they have anyone. Yeah, they don't have anyone else on the practice squad, or any other quarterback on the practice squad. So,
and I think they're fine rolling with Tyler Huntley and Tim Boyle for a bit. Skylar Thompson's probably going to be good to go too.
Yeah, but Seahawks improved to 3-0, and they will be going up against the Lions next week, which I think could be a good game. That's on Monday Night Football next week. So, wait. Oh, okay. So we have – that's actually both are going to be good games. We have 2, again, a doubleheader next week for Monday Night Football. So,
yeah. which is good if we do our bi-weekly podcasts.
There you go.
So we can, because we'll be previewing tonight's games.
Mm-hmm.
But first, unfortunately, you guys are going to have to sit down and listen to us talk about the Colts-Bears game. It's maybe the worst game of the week.
I think it probably was the worst game of the week. Let me pull.
Anthony Richardson again looked bad.
Yep.
And
even if you're a Colts fan and you win this game, you shouldn't feel good about it.
No. I think here's the thing. Anthony Richardson, I think, is really talented. And I think people are already counting him out. I know I saw some tweets about his accuracy. I think one of our friends from 24/7, Alex, said he might be the most inaccurate quarterback he's ever seen. But I would like to remind people about Josh Allen. These were said his first 2 years. He looked really bad. He could not consistently get the ball down, but he had a cannon for an arm, and he was talented on the ground as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're seeing the exact same thing from Anthony Richardson, a guy who probably has the strongest arm in the league, and a guy who is really shifty on the ground and pretty strong too. So,
and he's still in that young quarterback phase where he thinks he can make every throw.
Yeah, and I think they just need to work with him.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same issue that Caleb Williams is having where, and you saw this more last week in that Texans game where it's like, not only can you think you can make every throw, but it's not even just like an arm strength thing. With Caleb Williams, it's more of a, you don't think a guy's going to get there. And I remember which quarterback was it? Someone was talking about it. It might have been, I think it was Peyton Manning was talking about it. And he said, when he was throwing all those interceptions his rookie year, there's a lot of times he would tell, I think it was like another wide receiver would be like, I didn't think he could, I didn't think the safety or the cornerback could get there. And after a while, the wide receiver just went like, Peyton, this is the NFL. Like every player is going to be able to get there.
Yeah. I think that we're seeing that from both of these.
Yeah.
And
it's in two different ways. Yeah, it's in two different ways. It's almost, but with Anthony Richardson, it's more just like, oh, just throw it deep.
Yeah. And sure, he completed 10 of his 20 passes, which
he currently sits right now with a 49% completion percentage.
Yeah,
so,
but although, yeah, you talk about that. I wanted to look at Josh Allen's stats his first 2 seasons.
So outside of those 2 interceptions, Jonathan Taylor actually had a really, really good game. 23 carries, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns and then Trey Sermon rushes in another touchdown as well. So Anthony Richardson, while he did finish with 167 passing yards, he had that big bomb to Alec Pierce. And then actually 2 plays later in the red zone, he has a terrible interception where it's just like you can't throw it there. So really with that interception, it was less of a arm strength thing and it was more of a decision-making thing. Yeah. They get their first win of the season. Bears drop to 1-2. Don't let the stats fool you on Caleb Williams. A lot of his plays were made in garbage time. When they were kind of posting a comeback, they did score 2 touchdowns with Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet, but it just it was not enough.
Yeah, plus, Caleb Williams, he had to throw the ball 50 times. So
yeah, which does not –
so your stats are going to be a little bit inflated. But it was nice to see that they trusted the game into his hands, which we haven't seen in the first 2 weeks. It seemed like he wasn't giving that opportunity early on. And
it just seems like if you can utilize that run game more with DeAndre Swift, which I just don't know how it has to be still the offensive line problem, and it's a play calling issue too. There were a couple plays I remember watching and I see on TikTok, it's like, why do you do this? Specifically one where they're at the goal line and they choose to do a speed option, and then they on the goal line with whoever they're running. I think it was actually the Roshan Johnson. Is it Roshan? Roshan. There we go. Roshan Johnson. An I formation and a speed option with Caleb Williams. It's like, or you're on the 1 yard line, you could just run it up the middle. But
probably
either way.
And I looked
Caleb
it
Williams. Okay, there you go.
Josh Allen, his first season, 52% completion,
Okay.
10 touchdowns, 12 picks.
Okay.
And then the next season, he was better, 58%. He cut his interceptions down. And then after that, he started to get a lot better. His 70% completion, he sits around 60 to 70 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something that you can coach out of these players that are just very raw. And I think Anthony Richardson is very raw.
Oh, for sure. I mean, 22 years old. Really, he didn't start getting that hype about being a high draft pick until his last year at Florida, where this was the same issue as was completion percentage. But he also didn't really that was his only year as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, he hasn't played a lot of football here, and
at least at a high
levels.
level. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, if you have Jonathan Taylor, it's like you can afford to play a little bit bad.
Yeah, they're Jonathan Taylor, kind of a surprising, they win this game because of him, because I wasn't. Jonathan Taylor's one of those backs where you think he might be fading away, but then just when you think that, he has a game. He had a couple of these games last year, so
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about Jonathan Taylor winning that game. Caleb Williams, he did do a lot of work in garbage time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you saw the play at the end. It was like time running out, throws a Hail Mary, completes it, and I can't remember who he completed
And
it
I do
to.
want to say that was at the end of the first half, by the way. But still, yeah, it was completed to DJ Moore. 1 yard short.
DJ Moore?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 yard short of the end zone.
Would have been the difference, really.
Half over. Yeah, and I mean, that would have tied the game up. A lot of momentum.
Mm-hmm. By the way, just breaking news. This is awesome that I found this out. The Baylor-Iowa State game that I will be in attendance for the tailgate. Game time, 6:30, baby.
Is that a whiteout?
I think it is, yeah.
There you go.
I know. I was looking forward to that because this is going to be like the first tailgate I can go to in a long time. Girlfriend's hosting a big one, and I was like, all right, well, if we want to have a perfect tailgate, can we not have it be can we not have the game start at 11? Because I don't really want to get up and tailgate at 7 a.m.
Yeah,
so
that's why the Minnesota game was perfect this week. Minnesota,
I
Iowa.
bet, yeah. Except they lost.
Yeah, but 6 is probably 8 p.m. by the time we knew that it was over, and
yeah,
by then I was incoherent.
Plus, real quick thing on college football. I mean, Caleb Johnson is insane.
Yeah, he might be the best running back in the league.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't think he was getting serious hype about playing on Sundays next year, but he definitely should be now.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, another thing with college, Shedeur Sanders has to go first overall.
Why is that?
If you saw he complete pretty much completed 2 Hail Marys that game, comeback win.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was into the chest of a receiver at the 1 yard line, and he drops it. And then the next.
I did watch that for sure. Yeah. But number one pick overall, I think it should actually be
Cam Ward.
No, Travis Hunter should be in consideration for that.
No.
Okay. Well,
a receiver. Mm-mm.
Corner. I'm just kidding. That makes it worse, actually.
Plus Cam Ward. I don't know if we're talking enough about Cam Ward.
No, he's been
the most nonchalant guy I've ever seen.
He's been
just see him work the pocket. It's like he's so calm and collected. It's like Tom Brady-esque.
14 touchdowns, 2 picks for him already. And they're 3-0. Are they 3-0?
I do not know.
4-0, excuse me. Oh my gosh, their opponents. Since beating Florida, they've played Florida A&M, Ball State, and South Florida.
Okay, now Ball State.
They have an easy schedule to start the year. Next, they are at home. This week, they're at home against Virginia Tech, then on the road against Cal. Then they play Louisville, and a free win against Florida State.
Florida
Anyways,
State. The war is over. Florida State has won a football game.
I know, right when I bet on Cal to win.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
Anyways,
so, by the way, I wanted to mention in that Chiefs Falcons game, Rashee Rice does get my last best performance because he had 11 catches, put the team on his back, was really Patrick Mahomes' favorite target in that game, and he was making plays all night. So
he won me fantasy, hopefully.
yeah, I honestly, there's sometimes where I doubt that he can be that big of a playmaker, but he really was a big help for Mahomes last night. So there you go.
And
We can now we're done with the Sunday games, and now, well, do you want to move to previewing tonight's games, or we can do our frauds or nah segment?
we'll look ahead to tonight's games right now.
All right, we'll
Just because
preview
it's
some Monday
coming up
Night
in
Football.
6 hours here.
I know, it's awesome. 7 hours, but anyways.
6.5 for the first one. 6:25 actually.
I'll probably miss the first half of both of those games. I'll have to go into work and then go into the gym after. So that's what I do for you people. I fit this podcast in, so then I go into the gym at night and miss more football. But it'll probably be on while I'm at the gym. So
That's nice. My gym has no TVs.
I know, but I kind of want to go to a gym like yours. It looks like you're working out in someone's garage.
I know. I've been hyping people up. Actually, I'm gonna gatekeep where it is, just because it's small. But it's like a nice little inside. It's literally in a garage. They've got like a turf. It's one of those gyms that I feel like you would see like a professional bodybuilder in, and they do like the montages.
Mm-hmm.
I guess nobody else watches those because they're not weird like me. But it seems like we're on quite a tangent away from the Monday night games.
It's our podcast. We can do what we want.
Yeah, but speaking of doing what they want, Commanders Bengals, Jaden Daniels might do what he wants against this Bengals defense.
Yeah, little Uzi Vert. Now I do what I want. I'm not looking forward to this game as much as Bills Jaguars, but I do think Jaden Daniels has been obviously the best rookie quarterback so far. And I want to see maybe they can beat the Bengals because I'm not exactly the hugest Bengals fan outside of Joe Burrow, who I do need to play well tonight. So
yeah, and I mean I need Jaden Daniels to play well, so
there you go.
We just need a good game.
Yeah, we're looking for some good quarterback play tonight. Commanders defense, I think, is all right. Same with that. I don't think defensively neither team has the edge over the other. But I think it's huge that this game's getting played in Cincinnati, obviously. So I would probably predict that the Bengals are going to take this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Commanders push them.
Yeah, I think this will be a defining moment for Jaden Daniels because I mean this is probably his best chance for like a great win early on, get some confidence going.
Yeah.
I think if he can handle Hendrickson in the pocket, if he can scramble a bit, I feel like the Commanders can actually push the Bengals. I mean, we really haven't seen the Bengals do much this year. They lost to the Patriots. Are they sitting at 0-2 now? Lost to the Chiefs.
Yeah, they're 0-2.
I mean,
they need that. They're kind of like the Ravens, where they need this win. You can't have them fall the 0-3, especially in the Bengals case where they would be losing to the Commanders.
Yeah, and I think the Commanders definitely look better with a competent quarterback.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Brian Robinson Jr. has also been playing pretty well to start the year too.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a game that I could see going either way, but I think the Bengals at home, this would be an embarrassing loss, and I don't think they want that.
Yeah, and I guess moving to that Jags-Bills game, I honestly think this is a easy way. I know, Jags are a competitive team, almost made the playoffs last year, but they imploded. They have still a great quarterback, I think, personally, in Trevor Lawrence. But I think this is kind of an easy win for the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, especially because now that I've seen the Browns play 3 games, the Jags losing to the Browns last week was, very concerning for me.
Jags lost to the Browns.
Yeah, the Jags
Okay.
losing to the Browns.
But yeah, also, Jags sitting at 0-2. If they fall to 0-3, I mean,
Goodbye playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty hard, wouldn't it? And you have to consider, is Doug Peterson the guy there? I know he brought them to the playoffs in his first year, but last 2 years have not been looking great. I think you just need a little bit more out of Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, I still think he's a great quarterback, but he hasn't really impressed me this year so far. And I think both of their games have kind of been winnable, and they haven't stepped up. One thing I wanted to say about the Jags is that it just doesn't really seem like they have that umph factor to beat a team like Buffalo, especially not right now.
You got the oomph?
The oomph, as people might say.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you would think that Trevor Lawrence would be like this game changer. He's really talented, probably the best quarterback out of college we've seen, and probably top 3 ever, I want to say. And I mean, a lot of times I'm just sitting there, I'm like, when is he going to turn it on? When is he going to win these games? It's
kind of like the meme with the guy with the stick. Do something.
Do something. Yeah, that's me with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he has talent around him. I mean, sure, the receivers aren't the greatest, but I mean, at some point you want to see him actually compete with teams. If he's going to be an elite quarterback, he has to beat teams like the Bills. So this is going to be a tester.
And I really want to check that. They are in Buffalo for this. It's going to be a tough one. I would be very surprised if they come out with a win. I'm going to predict a Bills win.
Although it's been very hard to predict stuff this year. I mean, who would have predicted the Raiders to blow it to the worst team in the league?
Not me, that's for sure.
But I think I'll have to go with the Bills too.
Now we move on to our last segment of the week. Probably one I've been looking forward to the most. Fraud? Are you a fraud or not? It says not, but kind of living back in the Vine days.
I don't remember that. I think I'm too young for.
Or nah. You got a bay?
Okay.
Or nah.
Anyways.
Okay.
Who you got as a fraud?
You had Thursday. You had the Thursday night preview on here. We can do that for our.
I feel like we already talked a lot about it.
Yeah, so there you go. We did it. First one, Saints, fraud or nah?
I think they're frauds. I was telling people last week, I'm like, I'm not sold yet. These are the Saints. This is Derek Carr. Give me one more week. And what we saw was the offense just not doing anything. I mean, I wouldn't say the Eagles are good, but I mean, it's a team that you should be able to beat if you're putting up 40 points on the Cowboys.
At home in a pretty winnable game against the Eagles, they sell it. I think it's just, I mean, early stages, maybe this is just a game that they drop and they're kind of an off day. I feel like that's kind of what it was for the Bucks against the Broncos. But I'm going to have to agree with you. I think as of right now, there was a lot of hype coming into this game. People were talking about them being the best team in the league, best offense. What happened? I know that Eagles defense is good, but they also just blew it against the Falcons, who I think the Saints are better than. So I'm going to go with a yes on them as frauds. I think I might know your answer. Your Cowboys, frauds or not?
I'm going to say not. They're not frauds.
Okay.
Because still early in the season, they have talent across the board, and I think they've lost to good teams, I want to say. So I mean, I'm not too concerned about losing to the Ravens. It's going to be this next game against the Giants. If they lose that, then good luck.
Or even just depending on how they win it. I mean, I'm expecting we have been blowing out the Giants the last couple of years, so I'm expecting the same.
Yeah. So
I'll go with not.
More week.
Yeah, I'll go with not as well, not just because I'm a homer, but I think we have the talent to put things together defensively. and off like with the talent that we have, we're never gonna. People can call us frauds. We're gonna end up winning 10 games this year. I'm just gonna put it blankly. It's gonna happen. So I'm gonna agree with you. Not frauds, not yet, at least.
Yeah.
Seahawks, frauds or not? 3-0. One of the only handful of 3-0 teams in the league. We got the rest of the stretch here, by the way, is 3-0 teams. So
Seahawks are frauds. Sorry, Seahawks. You're 3-0, but I'm still not sold at all. I don't think I'll ever be sold with Geno Smith as quarterback. Everybody wants to hype him up. He's just a glorified backup. I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I don't think they're frauds. I think their offense is, underwhelmed. Some people might be underrating their offense. I know, Geno, he might have his turnover every once in a while in the game, but he's going to keep finding Lockett and JSN and DK Metcalf. And when Kenneth Walker comes back, that run game is going to be back to what it was. And the defense has looked even better. So I think really won't be surprised if they make the playoffs this year. Not frauds yet for me. I think they're still a very good team.
Well, I think they'll probably make the playoffs. Maybe, I guess, if the Cardinals don't push them out. But I don't think they're a team that's set up to win playoff games. They just don't have that elite quarterback talent to win.
That's true. Because then when they get into the playoffs, they're going to have to go up against teams like, probably the Eagles, the Vikings, the Packers, the Saints, the Niners. We'll look across there, but
Plus they don't really have a quality win under their belt. They beat the Broncos by a score. They beat the Patriots in overtime. And they beat up on a Dolphins team that was starting Tim Boyle for the second.
Okay. So I guess if you want to look at the quality of the wins, probably not great. Last two here, Vikings, frauds or not?
Nah, not frauds.
I agree. I think I think this is going to be a playoff team. Sam Darnold, I think his production might dip a little bit, but that defense is what's keeping them together. A defense that I don't really think they've really had at this level in the last couple of years, but for some reason it's just kind of turned on.
Yeah, I think this is kind of what they do. They have just like random really good years. I think this is one of them. I think we'll see them. They're probably not going to – I don't know if they're going to win 12 games this year.
No, I could see 10.
But yeah, I think they'll make the playoffs, and I think they could win a playoff game or two from the wild card spot, and then
I think
or if they win the division, then
I think they'll compete. I think they're going to be they're going to be competitive with the Lions and the Packers. I'm really excited for their division games coming up.
Yeah, that'll be really telling. I also I'm scared about Sam Darnold, of course, because that's one of the guys that I've hated on his entire career because he just has never been good. So it's kind of weird to see him play well. And it's one of those that I feel like at some point maybe
revert back to the mean.
Yeah. And don't want to see that, but there is that possibility.
I think there's going to be a mean with Sam Darnold where right now he's playing great. We've also seen him play terrible. I think we're going to see him playing admirable down the stretch.
Yeah, but I don't think they're frauds.
Last one here. Steelers, 3-0. Justin Fields starting quarterback, 3-0. Probably has looked better than he ever did really on the Bears. Frauds or not?
Yeah, they're frauds. Typical Steelers, they're going to win. They're probably going to win like 7 of their first 9 games, and then they're going to finish with like a 500 record. That's how the Steelers work. They surprise people early on. It's like, oh, we counted the Steelers out. And I'm like, yeah, it's Mike Tomlin's just getting his early wins so that he can drop games later. They barely ever finish well above 500. They might make the playoffs. I
really hope they don't.
Miss it.
Yeah, I want the best teams in there.
Yeah, they'll be a first round exit if they do make it, like they always do. So I mean, Yeah,
they
I think
have
they're
the potential here to be 5-1 going into a game at home with the Jets. So 3-0, obviously. Then they're going to go on the road against the Colts,
Mm-hmm.
then host the Cowboys for Sunday Night Football. I'm sorry, wherever that's at. I am praying that's a win. And then on the road against the Raiders, they could very easily be 5-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the Jets at home, but then they play the Giants and the Commanders in back-to-back weeks. So what are we looking at there? 7-2? Best
What I
case
say,
scenario?
7 of their first 9 games. That's what they always front load their schedule with easy matchups, and then
That
they
is true
put off
because
all the tough ones till later on.
I do remember looking at their schedule at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, they have to play how many division games at the end? They play all their division games
Mm-hmm. They play all the tough matchups at the end. They always do that.
of their last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of their last 8 games, 5 are division games.
Yeah, and those are all probably losses. They'll probably squeak out 2 of those. But
Wait, 1, 2. Wait, 1, 2, 3.
back to the math podcast.
8. Yeah, of their last 8 games, 5 are division.
Yeah. So yeah, they're frauds. Might be a little biased coming from a Browns fan, but
excuse me,
Seahawks.
6. I counted. I don't know why I was counting the Ravens as not a division game, but so of their last 8 games, 6 are in the division.
Okay. Wow. So all of them, actually.
No, of their last 8 games, 6 are in division.
Yeah, so they play the 3
all of their division games in the last 8 weeks, pretty much.
It's crazy.
And those other 2 games you might think are, they might have a chance to win. They play the Eagles and the Chiefs. So,
Welcome to Steelers football.
So those last 8 weeks, I'm not gonna lie, depending on if the Bengals get better and the Browns. Okay, and in their division, I don't know why we're focused so much on the Steelers right now, but I kind of just want to get on this tangent and then be done. But I could see them splitting with honestly, I could probably see them splitting with the Ravens, the Bengals, and they might 2-0 the Browns.
No.
Okay. We'll see.
They never do that.
They've consistently done that.
Browns have never lost that many games.
The Browns have never went 1-15 and then 0-16.
Why would they do that?
Yeah. That the goal is to win games, not lose.
Well, you should tell my team that.
Me too. Tell that to Micah. Anyway, and the rest of the defense. But that's going to do it for us here on Trench Talk. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Our first bi-weekly episode. Hopefully we'll be bringing more of these to you. Hoping to see you guys on Thursday where we'll talk about the Monday night games, even though it'll be, a couple of days, or we could end up doing Wednesday. But we'll see you guys regardless later this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys next time.